I'd like to thank Playvig.com for sponsoring this video and helping me a ton through the adpocalypse. So Playvig itself is a platform that allows players of all different levels to win prizes such as cash by completing single player quests or by competing in tournaments, which are in fact added every single Friday. Currently, they are giving away $10,000 in guaranteed prize pool money for tournament prizes between November 15th and December 31st. So now is really good a time as any to give it a try. So maybe I'll see you there. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about XQC playing Winston. Now, he was banned, then unbanned, and then banned, and then unbanned in this gameplay, which is just a few days old, and he might be banned again. I don't know. He's all over the place. But we did luckily get this gameplay, and I think he does really good with Winston in this game. Now, overall, I'm going to say Winston really isn't a must pick anymore, but dive comps still are so strong in solo queue if you can play them correctly. Mainly in high elo, they're really strong. I mean, lower elo, I think, slow push comps are probably better. And as well, in esports, dive comps still are some of the best comps. So I think it can really just kind of show that Winston still is a very, very viable pick. Now, right there at the beginning, one thing I want to say is that XQC doesn't really instantly dive in on team fights all the time. I think a lot of players would have just, on the first team fight, jumped in there, hoped their team would have done stuff, but he didn't. He waited for his team, he blocked a lot of damage, he kind of got this Reaper's attention, and then went in when everybody was kind of out of place, and that's essentially what you want to do with Winston. You don't want to just go in there and hope that your team's going to get the kills. You do have to kind of peel, you do have to kind of wait for your team and make sure that you are playing with your team, and wait for a lot of good opportunities with this character. The Mercy was pretty low, so we jumped in on that, and it worked out really quite well for them. A thing I also want to mention is that if you are a tank player, solo Winston works really okay on King of the Hill maps. Of course, it's better with a second tank, always, but if you can't get that, solo Winston can work. I think, it's probably a little bit better than solo Reinhardt on King of the Hill. On the other, payload and everything, maybe you want to go for solo Reinhardt, but definitely on King of the Hill, it is an option. So, if you want to go for that again, you kind of can. During this game, the enemies actually have a Reaper, and I think most people would agree that Reaper does counter Winston pretty hard. He walks up, he kills you, it's kind of hard. What you can do to kind of do well against the Reaper is, first off, that we see XQC do a lot, walk in and out of your bubble, and mainly just stay behind your bubble so that the Reaper just can't walk up and kill you. Just allow your own DPS to kind of just force him out of the fight. As well with that, if you can just try to kind of bait the Reaper too far in and then your DPS collapses on him, that can be another option. Or if you can just bait him around a fight and then you go in on the enemy backline and your DPS can hopefully deal with the Reaper, those can all kind of work for yourself. Just because they have a Reaper doesn't mean you're going to immediately lose. You just kind of have to change your playstyle a little bit. And I think they might have swapped. No, they're still playing Reaper, obviously, right there. But yeah, I think later they do swap, even though, it does counter this team comp so well. Reaper does. You could still win, even if you're facing kind of a bad comp, as long as you're just kind of playing it right. And I think a lot of people, they have varying degrees on how much they think Winston gets countered by Reaper, but I think there is still stuff that you can do. As well, what you might want to do, which we're seeing right here, is really just not chasing people way too much. At the very beginning, in most fights, he just kind of shoots at the front line, hides around a corner, starts getting out some damage, puts down, his just melee attacks, puts down his shield, everything like that. But then after all that's said and done, and after the enemies use all their main damage bursts, then again, he jumps in and does a lot of damage to the closest person. And for the most part, he doesn't really like to chase. He just hits the person that's the closest to him, unless it's like a Mercy that he can obviously kill. And for the most part, he's just, at least on this map, trying to keep his supports pretty safe, because this is a closed map. You can keep your supports safe. They can play around you as Winston. And the next map, it's a little bit different because it just doesn't work as well for Winston defending. He plays a lot more aggressively. But, you kind of just have to learn the maps, and in this case, it does work really, really well for him. We're seeing this right here. Again, another re-engage every single time. Actually, no, this is a different one. They have way more ultimates than the enemy team. Obviously, XQC's team does. So what you can do in that case is not be patient and just jump in on the enemy backline immediately, tell everybody to ult, and go in from there. You put on so much pressure on their support, stop all the healing, stop a nano boost if they happen to have one because you have your shield up there, stop reses, stop everything, and allow your team to just get a really nice engage, and that's exactly what he does. Only do that if you have ult advantage or number advantage, though. That's what you have to do. And finally, I guess, if the team isn't deathballed at all, or just at any time, half of them are on one side of the map and half are the other, just tell your team, hey guys, dive these guys. Let's dive the 2 supports and the 1 DPS. Get in there and kill them. While at the most time, for the most part, if they're next to each other, you shouldn't really do that. You should be more patient. But yeah, if you see an opportunity, make sure to call it out. Make sure everybody knows that it's there. And if the opportunity is still there after you've called out and after people have responded to you, then finally go for it. Don't just do stuff the second you call it out, because oftentimes people won't really listen to you, which kind of sucks. Right there, we saw XQC jumping immediately to the high ground. That's overall a smart thing to do. Now, Winston doesn't really benefit from high ground that much. I mean, he can jump down and get some people and maybe pick off a support. But for the most part, it's just trying to keep these other characters off the high ground. Trying to at least put a little bit of pressure on that Pharah. I'm trying to put some pressure on whoever, whatever DPS wants to try to get up there. I'll get a lot of damage on this Mercy. Unfortunately, doesn't get her and his team gets kind of wiped right there. But yeah, that can work for you pretty well. I think this map works okay with dive comp, but it's just a little bit too open. There's a little bit too much high ground and it's kind of hard to go for. The enemies will often kind of split up quite a bit, which can be nice, but your team will also. So, I don't really like this map in particular, but, it can work out, halfway okay. And I think especially the elusive speed boost isn't way too strong on this map in particular. Anyways, as we're kind of continuing right here, they're just essentially just shooting whoever's closest to him. Again, if you do see a Mercy or something that you can go for, try to damage them. Right there, he backs off instead of trying to get a little bit of extra damage on the enemy tanks. If you have more HP than the enemy tanks, then of course keep fighting them, keep damaging them. But if you don't have a support, you're for the most part just gonna go like 1-for-1. It's not really worth your time. So maybe get some damage, kind of spook them away from your back line, and then again just kind of back off a little bit. Right there we see XQC again getting a ton of damage on the Pharah, eventually finishing off the Pharah. That's something you should keep in mind. If you just keep jumping up and down, getting to high ground, you can put a ton of pressure on the Pharah and force the Mercy to almost always be healing the Pharah. And if she doesn't, you can kill the Pharah yourself or get some of your hit scan to help you. That's something that's important to do because getting attention is just one of those things that Winston can really do. He's just a monkey that jumps all over the place, does buttloads of damage, and can put up that shield that can be really annoying to deal with. So you kind of want to go for that. Again, right here, he's waiting on high ground. I think they still have a Pharah, so he just kind of wants to be able to get that guy off of there, stall for a lot of time, and, that's kind of just what you have to do in the situation. Let me see right here, just waiting for the most part. Not way too much to say about this section. The Pharah walks around. Unfortunately, somebody gets picked, so, that kind of happens. But he sees the Mercy, goes for him at the back line, and his soldier gets a kill, so he's just going to keep going in the back line. For the most part, the enemy team is engaging really hard. They're just going to kind of ignore you. And if you have your ultimate, just put down your E, put down that shield, start damaging the Mercy or the Zen or whatever, and just keep going after them. If the enemy team is hard engaging and just kind of completely ignoring their supports, because oftentimes you can pick one, you can kill one. Unfortunately, XQC's team was down a few players during this fight, so it didn't work out way too well that time. But it puts on so much pressure on the back line. They really can't heal way too much, and it just allows the rest of your team to do, again, really well. And again, it's that Winston pressure that you can put essentially all over the stinking place. During that fight, and during almost every single fight as well, though, he tells his team when they're starting to lose to save their ultimates and regroup. Every single time he says that, not like angrily, he just kind of says it. That's something you should get used to doing, because even though it's like the most simple knowledge that everyone should do every single game, people don't. People do their own thing and just go out without you because they want to get a pick or something. But if you call it out, most of the time people will kind of listen to you. Right here, you see somebody off by himself as Zenyatta. Almost gets him, but then unfortunately the health pack, he notices that he's, not at full health. There are a lot of people around him, and, Zen can probably 1v1 him at that health. So he backs off a little bit. Pretty smart idea. Doesn't get the shield down, but eventually does finish that off. Genji gets a nice, I think it's just Swift Strike, and then he jumps immediately towards the enemy McCree. I don't even know he saw that guy, but he jumped all the way back. I think he just kind of assumed that there was going to be someone way back there in the back line because they have been there the entire game, and, I guess that just comes with playing the game. Maybe you saw him. I don't know. It's kind of 50-50 on that. Maybe you just saw the McCree jump down, so he knew he was there in the first place. And finally, they're finishing off this point again, zapping whoever. Against D.Va, what you want to make sure to do, the little mini D.Va, is to zap her and then punch her, like, as much as you can, because it kind of, if she gets her ult up really quick, it can kind of be hard and just waste a lot of time. But, if you get the punches, you're going to be able to kill her a little bit more. And that's kind of just what he does with Winston a lot. When he's just dealing out damage, he zaps them and then punches them and just kind of switches between that. Especially when he's about to reload, he goes for that. Right here, we see a really nice ultimate, just stalling. Those are the two main things about your ultimate that you can do is, of course, stall or try to get a kill with it. And stall on point, or I guess really just stall by pushing people away from the point and hoping that your team's going to win the team fight. Unfortunately, again, XQC's team does not win that team fight right there, so a little bit hard right there. And then I think the enemies just pick off the point, barely get it, and there you go. And, that was unfortunate, but still XQC did his best. I think he got 2 or 3 guys out of that fight, maybe just 2. But still, that's enough that, you know, his team probably should have been able to win. Fortunately, they didn't, but, you know, he gave them the best opportunity as humanly possible, and that's really what you're trying to do as this character. And during this final round, it actually works out really well for XQC. At the beginning of this game right here, we saw XQC again jumping up way in front of his teammates, trying to get vision, and mainly just trying to control corners and trying to just, you know, get a presence on the map. You want to make sure to do that, because if you come way later than the enemies, you're essentially just going to not be able to get on the point. And that's kind of what happened right here, because the enemies did have a Lucio. And that's one thing you might want to keep in mind as well. If you jump in, but you don't have a Lucio or anything, the enemies are going to get to it first. They're going to have better positioning, and it's going to be kind of hard for you. But if you don't have a Lucio, you do have more healing, and you do have more consistent, you know, just consistency with your comp, because you don't really have to worry about the speed boost. You just have healing instead. So you kind of have to play it more slowly if you know they have a Lucio and you don't. And that's kind of what he changes to. At the beginning, he, you know, went in, they had a Lucio, unfortunate. But now he's going to, you know, kind of jump in because he sees an easy kill and his team's up a few players. But for the most part, he's going to play a little bit more defensively and kind of wait a lot more. All right, here's something that's really smart to do, is that when you're versus a DPS, just hide in your shield until you either A, get help, or B, your jump cooldown refunds so that, or I mean, comes back up so that you can just jump away. I wouldn't really try to 1v1 most of the DPS if you're below half health. You might be able to, but it's so risky, and if you could just run away and get healed and then regroup with your team, for the most part, it's a lot better. And I guess a third option is that if you know your team's pretty close, but they can't heal you right away, jump straight up, try to stall the point for as long as you can, maybe ult, and I guess, you know, just try to do that. Right here as well, one thing I want to say about this game and a lot of games is that other than just, you know, shooting at them, zapping them, and then meleeing, whenever he changes target, he likes to melee. That's something that's kind of weird and I haven't really seen way too much. We don't see it at this exact second, but there we go. We saw a melee right there. I think we're going to see melee in a second. But really just whenever he changes target, whenever he decides to go after someone else, he melees. And it seems to work out pretty well for him, and he at least gets a little bit of burst out again. During this game we saw a few seconds ago, the enemy Mercy used her ultimate. And for the most part, against Mercy with her ultimate, you can't really do way too much. Of course, if she's low, you can kind of go for that, but you should really just be trying to ignore her and try to kill anybody else on her team, because you won't really be able to do it, and it's just kind of a waste of time for yourself because you just, you know, you tickle her. You don't really do way too much. It's going to be kind of hard for you. Again and again during this game, and during this round in particular, we actually see XQC jumping off the point, going, getting a health pack, and then jumping back on. The enemy team really does quite well against his team's backline, and he can't really protect them way too well because it is a Winston diva. Not too bad, but, you know, kind of hard to protect. So he takes the heals whenever he can. It does get rid of a little bit of your support ultimate charge, but most part it's worth it because you know, hopefully be able to win the fight because you have more HP than them, and you relieve a lot of pressure on your supports and allow your supports to heal other people instead of yourself. Yeah, he uses health packs just quite a bit more than other people because it's just so close, and as Winston you can get there almost immediately. Alright, here's another team fight. He walks up, tries to punch the Winston. If you are Winston versus Winston, you just zap, punch, zap, punch, zap, punch. You can as well go for your shift or your jump or whatever. That does a little bit of damage. And speaking of your jump damage, if you can do this, you want to do it every single time. You want to try to jump, land on the enemy, melee, and then start zapping. You can't always go for that, but I mean, if you can, it's his only way to really do burst. Right there, the enemy Genji ulted. When the Genji's ultimating, essentially your two options are to either go after the Genji if he's like at half health, you should probably do that, or ignore the Genji and jump on the enemy backline. XQC does that. He hits the Genji for a second, but then goes after the Mercy, and I think eventually goes after the other support and gets to kill them, pushes that guy off the map, and there we go. Overall, though, those are your two options, and I think overall that's just a good kind of example of how to play this character. He's not really, like, as strong as he was just a few patches ago because, you know, a lot of other people are getting buffs, but I feel like especially if you can get, like, a Moira plus a Lucio, or a Moira plus an Ana, or, you know, a Mercy plus a Lucio, you know, a lot of different team comps can work with this character. Either, you know, you sponge up a ton of damage, or you get in there quick. Those are the two things you should be trying to get with your team comp, and if you can get either of those, you can win a lot of games with this character, and I think that this is actually one of the tanks that can carry the most, but it's not really with mechanics, it's more with just knowing when to be where, when to go in, when to stay out, and you should really just be trying to focus that on yourself, and the way you can do that is by playing games and figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and comment down below what you want me to talk about in the next video, or look in the description because I wrote down every single tip, and you can do that in every single video. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.